Alright, so what I'm going to have you guys do for this lab is we're going to create a characters like this, and we're going to design it so that we're going to be able to set it up for animation. Later we're going to go ahead and we're going to use the bone tool to add joints to it, or bones, and we're going to be able to animate it just like we animated the walk cycle. Except this time you're going to create your own art for it so you can kind of go through the process. You know how it works because you've seen it and did it yourselves already. Now you're going to go ahead and create your own version. And how we do this is when I create anything like this, I always start with an idea, obviously, of like what kind of character I'm going to do. In your case, you guys can do anything. It could be really basic, simple shapes. It doesn't need to be like a super high quality professional rig that we're going to get into here. And what I want you to do basically is take a look at how this file is set up with the walk cycle that you guys messed around with. If you look at the library here off to the side, you'll notice that each part is broken down into different symbols. So what I've got is I've got my arm. I'm going to just go ahead and double click on that. And in order to save myself half the time, basically, when I was creating this, I just duplicated it. I just clicked and dragged from my library and used it on the opposite side of my character. So the left arm is still the right arm. So I just have arm, body, boot, head, lower leg, upper leg, and waist. So here's that. And in each layer, or in each symbol, I have two separate layers. I've got one for the outline, which is just my dark outline work, my black outline here. And then I've got one for the color. Oh, it looks like this. Maybe you just can't see it selected. Yeah, it's there. It's just difficult to see selected. So I've got that there. Then I've got my body. I'll just go ahead and go in there. And I've got this here. And I've got this broken into text, letters, and because the font isn't just a default Windows font, really quickly I'm going to go ahead and modify. There we go. Break apart. Modify break apart will no longer keep it as a object. Basically, these were text, so I could use the text tool to adjust it, but I wanted to keep it like this. So anyway, if I were to use this on a different computer with out the font installed already, it wouldn't be able to read it, and it would just bring up like some default text font that computer uses normally, or possibly whatever the last font used in Flash was, or Adobe Animate. So there's that. I got my color and outline. You guys don't have to worry too much about. I'm not going to downgrade you if you have everything on one layer. That's totally fine. But I just wanted to go ahead and show you how I sort of set this up. I'm going to move this out of the way a little bit, get it away from my layers. Then I've got the boot. Again, color and outline. The head. This is probably my most detailed piece here. I've got everything, just color and outline. And if I really were going to be getting really intricate with this, what I would do is I would have each part, on the head as a nested symbol, such as the eyes, possibly the mouth, depending how I was going to animate it. Maybe I already have a list of like phonemes and mouth expressions here in a folder in my library that I may do like a click and drag during certain points in my timeline, pending the audio I'm using, right? So the face can be set up differently, but I typically, if this were a little bit more advanced, I would have those possibilities to take advantage of for blinking, eyebrow raising movement, mouth, obviously I was already saying, maybe some ear wiggle, maybe some hat jiggle or something really basic, and The neck would typically be like a separate part if I were going to be doing the neck separate from the head, but in this case I kept it together just to keep it as simple to animate and rig as possible. Okay, so I got that, the lower leg. Now this is the interesting part, because for the arm, I'm going to have you guys do the arm in 3 different parts. You're going to do the upper arm up to the elbow, the lower arm, and then the hand. So you can animate all of them, just like the lower leg and upper leg. And I'm going to go through how to do that in just a moment. So this is the lower leg. So here's my upper leg. And you'll notice how I have it just sort of rounded and curved on each part. And then I've got the waist. And the waist is just a circle. So now when I go back into my scene 1 and I look at this, what I've got is, I'm just going to go ahead and use the free transform tool and just sort of show you how this is working. You see that? So it's just sort of set up in a way to be able to possibly animate from this point. So if I were to, let's just say, let's take both of these. Whoops. And we're going to set up a bone skeleton system, but if you look here, and if I were to have set this up in the right spot, you know, you can see that I get some really simple animation going when I get the bones in there. But you can see how it's rigged, that it doesn't sort of look weird when it's rotating. So here, you know, a little bit, if I go too much, you start to see where it breaks apart. But other than that, you can't tell. And then I've got the foot here, and I got a little wiggle there. So that's sort of how that goes. And you're going to do the same thing for the upper arm. Okay, so there's a quick, brief explanation on how this is set up. Now let's go ahead and do it ourselves. I'm going to create a new file. And I'm not going to do anything fancy with this. This is just going to be as basic as it gets, just to show you how to do it for all of you. Okay, now from here, go fit in window. I'll zoom out once, and I'm going to go ahead and just start drawing. And this time I used the pencil tool. You don't have to. You have no obligation to at all. I just did it because I wanted to keep the stroke of the line equal throughout the whole piece, whereas the brush tool, you can't really get those effects. I'm going to even make this a little bit bigger. Now what I'm going to start with is, let's just start with the upper arm. Okay. Alright. So my upper arm, it's always good to think about what kind of character you're going to do. In this case, I'm not doing anything special. And I'm just going to do like the sleeve. Hold on. Okay, and then maybe the arm up to this point. Okay, and now I'll do another layer. And do the lower arm. Okay, and now on the lower arm, I'm going to I'll go ahead and do something like this. And even on the, make sure you're on the right layer. Do a little elbow here. And okay, and then do one more. I'm going to call this hand. And on my hand layer, I'm going to get here, not doing anything fancy, and here we go. like I said, just really keeping it basic. There we go. That's fine. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and go here. Oop, make that on my upper arm. And here. And now what I'm going to do is take my upper arm, F8, convert it to a symbol. Go ahead and call it upper arm. V, double click, and now I can do some coloring. Here's what I recommend if you want to just go ahead and do this on, whatever. Outline, and then color. Alright, so I'm not too concerned about really anything with the color. With the color though, keep in mind you need to use the brush tool to do this correctly. I'll give him like a green shirt, and I'm just gonna go ahead like so. And you want to keep this rounded because when it rotates around, it helps in order to maintain this shape when it's rotating around inside the body, if that makes sense. It's just a really common way to set up your character when creating it. I think it personally makes it also visually easier to just go around like up to the shoulder point. Let's hide that. Okay. And there we go. Now I can turn on my outline. There you go. Now I'm going to go ahead and select a darker green, and this will be for the color there. And there we go. Fill that in. Go here. Fill that in. And then select a color for the skin. And this doesn't need to be like totally, I could go with this color here. And we'll go here. This is where it really does sort of matter, where in this particular case, because you're going to be going into that part and having it rotate, so you're going to want it to be a certain roundness. If it were just going straight across when it's animating around, you might not see it. So you want to keep that in mind. Okay, so he's going to be yellow. And V. Okay, go into scene 1. And now we're going to go to the lower arm. And we're going to press F8. And double click. Use your brush tool. Create a second layer. Color. Here, this is going to be outline. Go ahead, use the brush tool. And here I'm going to simply go around like so. Now, keeping in mind when you're creating this that you need to make sure that when you're animating around, a good way to test it, go back into your scene. Good way to test it is to grab your free transform tool and shift this to the corner. And when you move it around, you're going to see that you don't have those lines connecting. It looks funny. It looks fine up here, but you don't notice it. You notice a big, weird clump there, and then same thing here. So with that being said, you want to make sure that you set up your rig to work around those things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this down, and I'm fine with the elbow sort of going in like this, but here it doesn't work so good. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go on my outline, and I'm just going to use my arrow tool and just drag it sort of down. And this one too, just because I know I'm going to need it. And then here, and then I just grabbed one more line, and I'm going to sort of set it up like that. Okay, go back into scene 1. Same thing with this one. I'm just going to go ahead and bring this up. And you're going to see even more little things that are going to start to take place. So now that you see this, you're like, ooh, wait. Now this whole thing's not working right? But what if I go ahead and try to rearrange the layers? Then it looks like that. So you got to pick which one you want to be sort of hiding, whichever one's going to work better for this particular rig. So in this case, I'm going to use my eraser tool. I'm going to lock my color layer. In this case, I'm just going to go up to like this point right here and this point right here and delete it. And this one too. And now I want to make sure my lower arm's gonna be, I think I might have mixed that up. That's okay. Lock my color layer. Okay. Now, okay. And now I can just sort of reposition it and go ahead one more time and see how this works. So it's not perfect, and you could set it up to be a little bit better, but to give you an idea, that's basically what we're going for. Something that's going to hide that piece, right? That missing piece. So let's bring it back down. When it comes over this way, it overlaps, but on the other side, there's no way to get it like perfect. It's going to have its limitations, but that's no big deal. Let's go ahead and move this down. For this is totally acceptable and totally fine. You do not need to make this perfect. Alright. I'm going to click on my hand, F8, hand, okay. Double click on it, use my brush tool, create a new layer. Okay. Now, I'm going to lock my outline, use my brush tool, select my color layer, and just sort of start to swoop around here. Use my fill color. Okay. Go back in here. I'm just going to sort of shift it a little bit. And maybe I bring this below. And I'm going to set my wrist just to test it. So there. Okay. Now here, okay, grab my free transform tool. And now that I have that there, you'll notice it is possible to sort of fix it up and stuff. But when we set up the rig or whatever, you're gonna be able to move it and rotate it, so that's good. So you'll be able to do things like this and this to make it look right. So keeping that in mind, you guys have already messed around with the rig, so you kind of have an idea of how it works. Now you're creating your own, and you're gonna figure out sort of the things that work well and the things that don't work well when creating this. You could also call it a puppet. That's fair. Personally, I call it a rig because it is a character rig. We're setting it up for character animation. So anyway, there is our arm. Really, really simple. I'm not doing anything fancy. That being said, I'm going to create a folder, and in this case, I'll just call this right arm. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and later I'll just duplicate this, and I'll have it on the other side. I'll create another one, call it body. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and just create a body for this guy. something like that. Maybe I want to bring it down a little bit or whatever. I'll adjust it later, but that's fine. F8. Now with this one, what I can do is actually, to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to select my color here, that green. Go in my symbol, do that. Now it's all in the same layer. If I wanted to keep it on separate layers, I can. I'm going to Control X to cut. I'm going to create a new layer and Control Shift V to paste in place. And now I've got color and outline. So that's a fast way of doing that. I'm going to bring this below the arm, so now I have my body below the arm. Go ahead and move this up. Alright. I'm probably going to need to scale this down, which was no big deal, but what I'm going to do next is I'll do the waist. Okay. And the waist is just going to be basically that. Okay, click on it, F8, waist, double click on it, fill it, select it, can cut it, new layer, Control Shift V. Now, the reason I do it this way is because this is just a personal preference of mine. If I were to add like highlights and shadows and start to get really intricate in my art here, I would have the highlights on separate layers. And what I'm doing here is I just click my color layer, right, and then I can just change the entire color very quickly. Now if I were to like have highlights or shadows, and let's just say one of my highlights or shadows to be brighter or darker, depending whatever, I would have that on a separate layer, highlights, shadows, and then I would just be able to click on that layer and then just change all of it all at once, which makes things super fast and super efficient when working with these project files. Alright, so there's that. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and just start to do the legs. So in this case, new layer, upper leg. Okay. Bring this lower. And actually I want that higher so I can see it. Okay. And let's just do that. Okay. Now, upper leg, F8. Okay. Double click on it. Zoom in, create a new layer. B. And now I'm just going to go ahead and fill that in. Okay, filled. Alright. Take that, drag it underneath. Color, outline. Okay. Scene 1, new layer, lower leg, Shift Y. Okay. Didn't like that line, so I'm going to go ahead and go here. Maybe he's got bell bottoms just for fun. Alright. F8. Lower leg. Okay. V. Control X. What I just did was fill color, selection tool, cut color, create new layer, Control Shift V, paste in place, drag underneath, and now I've got outline and color. Alright. Alright. Now, with this one, I'm going to go ahead and make some adjustments. I'm going to grab my brush tool. I'm going to hold lock the color outline, and I'm simply just going to do something like this. Use the eraser tool, and now maybe it's something like that. And just to run a test, go ahead and bring this up to where the knee is, and you'll see how it's animating. You see that? Works pretty well until I get a little bit too far, which no big deal. When you're animating with the bone tool selected, you can move it a little bit also while rotating, so you can line those lines up to make it look nice. Alright, okay, so there's that. Let me zoom in. Okay, now I've done that, right? Let's get the foot in. Okay, foot, and I'm gonna go ahead and do, whoops, I don't know what kind of shoe I want to do. Maybe I'll just do a boot. Let's do a boot. Do something like this, and make it pointy. Alright, okay, I'm cool with that. Let's select the boot. F8, oh, convert to symbol, boot, double click, okay, make the color of the boot brown. Alright, this is the outline, so I'm going to select it, Control X to cut, new layer, Control Shift V to paste in place, and color. Okay, so now I've got the arm and the leg set up in 3 different parts each. What we're going to do from here, I think it's just a little bit easier. I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder. Left leg. Grab all these parts, go ahead and bring it into that folder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to call this L arm, just so I keep it easy to work with. Now I'm going to go ahead and select the entire other arm. I'm just going to bring the pivot point up there just so I can see it, and I'm going to bring it just a little bit above just so I can see it. And now I'm going to bring it below the body. So now I've got that arm, and you know what, I'm going to go ahead and just drag this out just a little bit so you can sort of see both arms, right? I don't know if it's your call. So for this, I'm totally fine with it. That looks fine to me. Alright, now the same thing with the leg. What I'm going to do is duplicate layers. This one I'm going to bring below the waist, and I'm going to rename this. This is actually R leg, and this is going to be L leg. Okay. And just like the last one, I'm just going to select all these, change my pivot point real fast, and just sort of show that I've got 2 different legs here. I'm just readjusting it. You guys don't have to make it like perfect or whatever like this. I just want to see that you guys got 2 different layers. So that's fine. Or 2 different legs working like that. So that's 2 different arms, 2 different legs. We only created them once, but for both sides of the body. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create the head. I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm just going to put the head all in one layer. And go ahead here. And I'm going to sort of shift this in place. And you know what, this one, let's go ahead and make a little bit smaller. And I'm going to shift that there. Going to go ahead and just draw this in. Let's go ahead and do something like that. And whoops. Okay. If I were creating an entirely separate headpiece with full facial animation, I would be doing this a little bit differently, but for this will be fine. Give him a little smirk or smile, and then I'm going to go ahead and draw in the ear, and I'm going to give him some goofy little hair here. Let's go ahead and just give him a little, and then I'm going to go ahead up here and something like this. And voila. There's my goofy little guy. And I'm going to press F8. Head is the portion here. And I'm going to select my color from his skin. I went with like a Simpsons color. Just because it was the first thing that came to my head. Not filling in, I'm going to go ahead and change my tool over here to close large gaps, see how that works out. And it's working pretty decently. And if I really were concerned about this, I would go in, let's see, it's not filling in there. I would go in and close these to make sure that they did. Okay. I'll make the inner part of his mouth like a dark gray because I'm not too concerned about it. And then his eyes, the eye color will be like this color. And then I'm going to just use the brush tool, or the oval tool actually in this case. I'm going to make that black. Alright, and he's good to go. You do actually want to fill in the color of the eye as well, by the way. And let me go ahead and do that. Okay, if I want to, I can go ahead and select all the colors. Make sure, Control X, new layer, color, Control Shift V, Control X on this one, Control Shift V, and let's bring that below. Okay, and make this white. Okay, and I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to take a look at this and call this layer outline. And I'm going to go over here. I'm going to take this. His head seems small in comparison to his body, so maybe I want to scale that up. His head looks really small. I think I was going towards like keeping it to fit while I was drawing it within the stage, so it looks a little offset. So let's just go ahead and bring that up a little bit. And in this case, I might have to bring this arm down just a bit. Something like that. So there you go. There you have it. Looked a little goofy there for a second. Still sort of does. He is a goofy character, but just kind of winged it. And then obviously once he's all set, you can rescale him to whatever if you need to. Anyway, this is the project. I just want you to go ahead and design your own character. I need you to make sure that you keep every layer, I'd like to see every layer named as well as every symbol named. You can use duplicates for both sides. That I'm not too concerned about. And yeah, so that's the project. Just design a character. Each part's separate parts, and each part is a symbol. So I should be able to click on it and see a light blue box around each one. So every part like that. So you got 3 for the leg, 3 for the arm. You can duplicate it. Then 3 for the main body, the waist, the body, and the head. You can have it set up however you want, whatever layering style you want. It just has to look somewhat, whatever your art style is, just try to do the best you can in order to make it look something like this. This is going to be just for a rig that we're going to do, and we're going to continue on the next lab. So make sure you save this, keep it, and we're going to create it using it for the next lab too. So that's all we got for this. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.